What's up, guys? So I decided I was going to do, or that I would do, last minute anyway, a video on the Fullforce fuel fittings or fuel kit combined with the Snappy RC fuel vent system, because I have both now as of tonight, and from what I've found, there's really not much out there on the internet as far as install videos. Fat Dad Baja's on a budget, has a really an older video that he talks about replacing the factory fuel lines with some of this, Tygon, DDM, O'Neill Brothers stuff, the biggest stuff, and that's really all he talks about. He doesn't run an additional vent, the venting system, the Snappy RC venting system. He just runs two simple fuel lines into a two-hole grommet, and that's it. Well, installing these fuel lines, for one, is a lot more difficult than I think I initially thought it would be. This stuff is really, really, really tough to work with. So what I found was that it was probably best to do a video because it might help some people. For one, there was no instructions in this Fullforce kit because this here is a replacement kit. I found it was a cheaper way to go about getting these for multiple rigs. It would have cost me $40 for these, I believe. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Let's see if we can find that sucker. Well, I won't make you guys wait, but for 4 of these and 2 feet of fuel line, that's what the Fullforce kit comes with for $20. Sometimes you can find it on DDM marked down to $17.99, but with shipping, either way, you're paying over $20. So it would have cost me $40 when what I was able to get by buying just these separately was 2 of these for $12 a piece. I got 6 feet of fuel line, 3 feet of green, 3 feet of clear orange, and 3 feet of regular clear, along with 4 of these clips for $1.70 for the pack. So yeah, and all of that was $32 out the door, shipped. So if you have multiple rigs and you want to upgrade to this Fullforce kit, which I definitely recommend, this is what my fuel line looked like at the grommet. And this stuff is cheaper, don't get me wrong. This green fuel line, I don't believe is Tygon. It was cheap stuff that came with the Ghost Racing G5. It's got a smaller diameter. It's just not the stuff that you'll find on DDM. Okay, so, but this stuff just ate itself by being pinched in that grommet. And when I removed even the DDM fuel line from the grommet, there was an area that was very pinched. So it's just, honestly, I think it's a must, and I'm assuming it's why everybody runs these. But I've seen, even in the install picture on DDM, they show the fuel line literally on the end of this fitting, like down here, just barely over that first bob. And in my opinion, that is not how this should be installed. Those 3 bobs at the top, they want that fuel line all the way up to the top. Okay, heating up the fuel line, if you have a heat gun or a blow dryer, I would definitely recommend it. I'm being lazy. I don't feel like going in the house and getting my wife's blow dryer, so I was doing my best to stay as far away from it as I could, but heating up the fuel line a bit, and a little bit of, and again, I apologize, guys. This video is very unprofessional. My whole work area is a mess. My Baja's a mess, but I felt like it needed to be done. I had some TLR 30 weight laying around, and if you put a little bit on the grommet, on the fuel lines, even on the fitting itself, it makes life a lot easier. So I recommend heating up the fuel line a bit. It makes it a little more pliable, and getting it on the, putting it on the actual fitting. But then, if you got it on your hands, you're going to need to put some paper towels over your hands so that you can actually spin the fuel line, you know what I mean? So your hands aren't slipping. It's really tough. It's a pain in the ass. So here we have the Snappy RC filter, the check valve, and that's all this is. It's aluminum, fancy looking check valve. It's not what I run on my other RCs. In fact, Amazon, I was able to get a 5-pack of these for like $3.99 or something ridiculous. And these are just check valves that they use on weed eaters. And I run this on my race truck, and I'm running one on my Vector clone. So those are what I recommend. But I wanted the Snappy RC kit because I wanted to make sure that I got a grommet with 3 holes in it, and I wanted it to be the right size. There's a lot of them on the internet for weed eaters, chainsaws, etc., but I wanted the right size. And at the time, Roven wasn't selling one. Now that Roven is making that Q Baja series, the really small mini Baja, I noticed that they're selling a 3 grommet with the fuel lines and the fuel clunk, you know, the fuel filter installed, for like, I don't know, $15 or something like that. So you get the 3-hole grommet plus the fuel lines. You're ready to rock and roll. You pop it in. They aren't the upgraded fuel lines, but it is what it is. So I know you guys have some questions, because I had some questions. How much fuel line do you install on the end of this fitting? Well, this is how I did it, and I'm going to put it in the light, because when I put the fitting through the grommet without fuel line on it, which is essentially how I see a lot of them installed, I'll show you what, and this is difficult without my other hand, but I'll show you how much play there is. Granted, when you install the grommet, it's going to tighten up, but I don't believe those bobs were designed to go through this grommet. It's just, I mean, there's just a lot of play there. And picture if this was just a 2-hole grommet. So in my opinion, the fuel line has to be installed all the way up to the top of the Fullforce fitting. And it needs to be slid through the little bobs on there. From what I understand, they initially on the first series, they were sharp and they were cutting people's fingers. So this is the version 2 that they talk about. But like I said, even in the picture, it shows the fuel line attached this far up, which means it's going through the grommet up here without any fuel line on it. And it just seems like it's got way too much play. So I installed the white or clear. I decided on clear and orange just so I could have a, you know, have some difference there, and I'll know, you know, that one's my return and one's my input. So this here is going to go to the bottom of the carburetor, the one that has the fuel filter on it. So you don't need much fuel line. Of course, you want to leave yourself a little bit in case it flips over or whatever, but needless to say, I haven't actually cut it yet. It's hanging here. I installed the 990 carb. Everything looks really, really good. I love the way it looks without the choke on it. You can see that nice bore, you know what I mean? If you look at one with a choke on it, let me see if I have the other one laying around still. If you look at one with a choke on it, you'll notice that the, you know, that's what it looks like as opposed to that. So the 990 has no choke. And yeah, that was an 1107 that I just had in my hands. That's the one I took off this rig because I'm having issues with it. Or at least not issues, but I just can't seem to get this engine to run right on the low end. The high end, I can tune it to incredible high end. Like it absolutely screams like a damn banshee across the field. But the low end is just not there. And I know this engine has it. At least I hope it does, or I'm going to be really pissed off if it don't. But yeah, so back to what I was saying. You want to give yourself enough room for your fuel filter to touch the bottom of the tank and have enough room to get to the lowest point in the tank. If you haven't got to that point, you have to make sure you do, because the you want it there. You know what I mean? And in the Baja, it's pretty simple. You just basically want to make sure that it goes to the back of the tank. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to go ahead and get the orange line prepared, which is going to be the return, okay? And in order to do that, I have to have a certain amount of orange line inside the tank, okay? It needs to go almost to the bottom of the tank, okay? It doesn't have to be, you don't want it this short, you don't want it, you know, you want it to the point where it goes almost to the bottom of the tank when you install it, which these fittings, I mean, hell, they're pretty long. you can see, but that won't reach the bottom of the tank. Where my pinky is right about where the bottom of the tank would be. So you honestly, if you're going to install the fuel line all the way up to the top of the fitting, you only need about that much, in my opinion, hanging off. As far as the check valve, okay, that there, I'm going to cut this. This is a piece of fuel line from the previous setup that I decided to use. And you can notice it's already backing itself off. I don't know if you can see that, but it's backing itself off. That was pushed all the way to the top. See how it backed itself off there? This camera's having a tough time focusing because there's so much going on in the background. But it backed itself off. And so that's another reason why those clamps are important. So I probably should have bought more, and I need to find that one that hit the ground. But the check valve, you don't want in the fuel. If you can avoid it, in the fuel. So you honestly just want enough fuel line to run through the grommet and just below the grommet. But you want to make sure that you gave yourself enough fuel line so that it's stable, especially if you're running this check valve. It's kind of heavy. It's kind of clunky. And so you don't want it just barely in the grommet. You want it enough that it's going to go through the grommet and some of it is going to stick out the bottom. Maybe just, see how the grommet is, it's got that recess there? You want it just below that recess. And so we're going to see if I can fit all of these through that grommet and get it back in the stock tank hole, size hole, with all of the fuel line up over the fittings like that. And so stay tuned, guys, because I'm going to do some work. I can't do it with one hand, and then we're going to get, I'm going to go ahead and break out the camera again, and we're going to see where I'm at with it. All right? All right, so this is what I've come up with for the return. And again, to get the fuel line on, I was worried about twisting these, you know, holding the fuel line in my hand and twisting the actual fitting, you know, twisting it into it, kind of screwing it into it. I didn't want to snap this head off the fuel line, you know, off the fitting, I apologize. But the fitting is really strong. I found that bunching paper towel up in my hands gave me the ability to really put some pressure on it without piercing my damn fingers. And I used about, this is about 2 3/4 inches, 2 3/4 of an inch of fuel line, okay, all the way up to the top of the fitting. And I'll pull this out. I wish my Baja wasn't so damn dirty right now, especially considering I'm working with the gas tank. But you'll notice it does not touch the bottom. You probably can't see, but it doesn't touch the bottom of the tank. That's about where it's going to be. It's right near the bottom of the tank. All right, and so that's where I want it. 2 3/4 of an inch, all the way up to the top of the fitting. And I used some shock oil. I rubbed it all over the fitting. I heated the actual line up after I got like right up over this first bob. I heated the line up with a little mini torch just for a few seconds, just enough till it was warm to the touch. I bunched up some paper towel in both hands and I just screwed this paper towel, this fuel line up onto the fitting. And I mean, it's slow going at first, but once it gets going, you'll get it right up to the top, and then it just takes a little bit to get it over those bobs. So now I'm going to go ahead and install it through the grommet and see if I can get the Snappy RC check valve. I'm going to cut this down and see if I can also get this in the grommet and get the grommet in the tank. Guys. Again, this is the Snappy RC 3-hole grommet that comes with the kit. That's 2 3/4 of an inch for the return. And this is for the input. And of course you can see that's maybe 4.5 inches. And honestly, I don't even think I need that much. I think I could have done that a little bit shorter, and I may end up cutting it back. But fuel line is all the way up to the top, slid right through, put a little bit of shock oil on the around the hole, and rubbed it up and down on the fuel line, you know, not too much of it. And I'm going to wipe whatever excess off is on there, just because. But now I'm going to go ahead and try to get the check valve in there. So all three of them went through the grommet nice and easy. The grommet is a lot bigger now, and so it's going to be difficult getting it through the stock hole, but I imagine it can be done. And keep in mind, now that these brass fittings are on there, it can't pinch, or in there, it can't pinch the fuel line no matter how tight it sits inside here. The only thing that could potentially get pinched would be the check valve, because that does not have a fitting in it. Okay, and that's about the length that I feel comfortable with as far as the amount of fuel line beyond the grommet in the tank. And that's because of the way the Baja tank is designed. You basically can only fill your Baja to the bottom of the fuel cap, you know, that fuel inlet, because of the way it's set up. If you fill it, you could never fill your Baja tank to the top, because if you did, it would stop puking out the fuel fill. So you guys know what I'm talking about. So yeah, that should be adequate. And so you kind of got to face these opposite each other here, like at a 90. Now I just have to run the fuel line from the cob to these and put the fittings on. I did end up finding that other fitting, the other clamp, and so I bought the pack for $1.70 because it came with 4, so that I can do the race truck, the X2, and do the Baja. Okay, so let's see how this grommet fits. Boys, it fits. I was just about to give up and go grab a drill bit, a big drill bit, and try to drill this hole out a little bit bigger in the stock tank, when, you know, I had the grommet like in there, but it just didn't seem like it was fitting, and I didn't want to pinch this and, you know, this line. And then I tried to pull the grommet back out, and I was like, oh, Jesus. So the grommet didn't want to come back out, and then I realized, you know what? I just needed to keep pushing on it. And basically what I did was I just kept pushing on it with the flathead until I got it to the point where it popped in good enough, and this isn't being pinched from what I can see. I'll keep an eye on it. If I have to, I'll use one of those inserts that the plane guys use. They put these like brass inserts or copper inserts. I'm not sure what they're made out of. I'm assuming it's brass. But yeah, so the fitting will fit. The Snappy RC grommet will fit with the Fullforce fittings. Fuel line all the way up to the top of the fitting. Fits really snug. And yeah, it's just a matter of getting my my fuel lines routed, and this is where I'm going to use the little clamps that I bought. They're made by Dubro. The clear designates the side with the fuel filter, okay, and the orange designates the side that runs to the top of the cob. Okay, that's the return. All right. So yeah, that's it. I think I'm saying that right? If I'm saying it wrong, you guys get the point. Either way, I wanted to make this video because that is not easily done. Remember, heat, some shock oil, paper towels so you can get some better grip, and they will fit. They will fit. Put the fuel line all the way to the top of that thing, and you're going to get a nice snug fit with your fittings, with your Fullforce fittings, and you can still fit a third line in there for a check valve. So stay tuned. I might do a wrap up here when I'm done. All right, there you have it, guys. Fullforce RC fuel line kit combined with the Snappy RC check valve kit. This check valve and this fuel line, they definitely need one of these little clamps. I only have 2 left, and I need to use them on my race truck for this setup, you know, this portion here. So I'm gonna have to get another package of those Dubro clamps. as it keeps backing off. I mean, eventually it's gonna stretch itself to the point where I imagine a month or so from now I should be able to push it down in, have it sit flush again, and it'll probably stay. But this is what I chose to go with for fuel line length. I mentioned something ridiculous earlier about when it flips over or something stupid like that. Guys, you don't need a lot of fuel line. I mean, the Rovin fuel line, they run it up over or something like that. I believe, I forget how they run it, but that's what I chose to go with. And this will get pushed down when the filter's sitting in place. It won't get in the way of the throttle linkage. So yeah, that's it. It works. And these, believe it or not, these fittings, now keep in mind, I ran the fuel line all the way to the top. That's more or less what this video is about. I ran the fuel line to the top of each fitting underneath the grommet, or through the grommet. And there's still play. I can still move these fittings. They're kind of 90 butted up against each other, but I can still move them. There's still play within the grommet itself. So that just goes to show you that even though that grommet is super tight, there's still movement in there. They're not being pinched so much that there's absolutely no movement. You know? So that's, I guess that's just something to think about. If you guys ran this Fullforce RC fuel line kit in the past, and you didn't run your fuel line all the way to the top of each fitting, and you just kind of put the fitting through the grommet and then put a little piece of the fuel line at the bottom of it. I mean, I imagine that works, but it seems like it would allow a lot of air in there, and eventually leak, and I mean, just all kinds of issues. So that's it. That's all I got for you, boys. I will do the same on my X2, and hopefully that 990 carb solves the issues with this SCZ, and we can see this Baja in action soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Alright, guys, so I buttoned everything up, and once again, this Snappy RC check valve was just working itself away from the fuel line to the point where it was just barely sitting in the fuel line. And I want to show you guys something, because when I got the Snappy RC kit, for the price you pay, I wasn't very impressed. They give you a tiny piece of clear fuel line. I wish I still had it. Cheap looking shit. Little tiny 1-inch piece, right? Which is all you need. But it's not attached to the check valve. Look at the diameter on that check valve. It's massive compared. Let me come over here so I can zoom in better. If I can. The diameter of the check valve is huge in comparison to the fuel line. And if you've installed this kit, you know what I'm talking about. This check valve is just too big for the diameter of fuel line that we're using. For example, this check valve, the diameter on that is right. That stuff slides right in, fits snug, snags good. It's a pain in the ass to pull the fuel line off, so it fits nicely. But this thing is massive. It's absolutely massive. So in my opinion, that's a problem. And I remembered that I had bought a 3-hole Echo weed trimmer setup on Amazon. It came with a bulb. It came with the grommet, a piece of this yellow fuel line, a nice looking new clunk, these little rings, which are fairly easy to get on and off and seem to do the job, and it came with this black fuel line, which was running to the clunk. But what I noticed was it had this insert in it, and the insert, this portion of it here, the longer portion, was running through the grommet itself. So the fuel line couldn't get pinched within the grommet. And I was thinking to myself, that's what I want for this. So I'm going to push this down more and get it as flush as I possibly can. I mean, it was flush before, but it was, even then, it was still relatively easy to slide the check valve out, even with that bigger fuel line. So I'm going to try to put this in there with this piece, and I'm going to use this black fuel line, I think, for the check valve, if I can get it to fit. If not, I'm going to do away with this whole check valve, and I'm just going to use the ones I got from Amazon, the Echo weed trimmer ones. This is an example of how big the diameter of that thing is. Look at it. It's massive. It's so big that the Dubro style rings don't fit over, clamps don't fit over it. I can't use that on here. It will not fit over that to lock the fuel line on there. The rings that came with the Echo kit don't fit either, which I guess it doesn't matter because I've dropped both of them on the floor. It's getting late. I need to hang it up. And yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty confident that that's going to hold better than the more like rubbery fuel line. This stuff here this is more pliable, but it doesn't have much stiffness to it. So this is going to kind of bounce around and hang as opposed to sitting kind of stiff and, you know what I mean, at attention. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this, we're going to cut this piece off, let that go through the grommet just enough, as it should for a check valve, and we're going to go ahead and set this up just like this. We're going to cut it, and then we're going to slide that through the grommet. Alright, so it's done. None of the clamps would fit around that Snappy RC aluminum check valve, or alloy check valve, and that's it. There you have it, guys. Running straight fuel line without an insert will work, but traditional fuel line just doesn't seem to fit over the diameter of that thing very well. So to be honest, I think this kind of rubbery black fuel line is what most of the, I think what the Bajas come with, you know. It's more rubbery as opposed to this stuff here. And so if you have any of it laying around, you might find it easier to mount the check valve. It's not backing off like the other stuff was, or just use a different check valve. I mean, but if you already spent the money on the Snappy RC kit, then you may as well use it. But to be honest, I wouldn't buy the kit again. Now that you can buy the right size 3-hole grommet pretty much everywhere. eBay, Amazon, AliExpress, and DDM even sells them for like $6, you know, the Snappy RC replacement one. Just buy the 3-hole grommet, buy the $12 Fullforce fittings, pick up $1.70 worth of those Dubro clamps, a couple feet of fuel line. The reason I bought 3 feet of each color was because I'm going to do 2 rigs with it, maybe 3. So yeah, I mean that's how it came out. I was able to get the grommet in there really nice while I had this out, and then putting this in, knowing that it has this plastic insert, you know, through the actual grommet portion, and it's not pinching anything, is really nice too. So that's just something that I happen to have laying around, and I got that from an Echo weed trimmer kit that I found on Amazon. And the reason I bought it is I thought the grommet would fit. And this was about a year ago, before I did some research and found that you can find the actual specs for the grommet online, and somebody gives the part number for this, you know, for the Baja style grommet, if you want to buy the Echo one. And yeah, so this does not fit, and you can tell just by looking at it. As soon as I got it, I was like, damn it. But I mean, it did come with a fuel clunk, and those little rings, I did happen to find them on the floor. They're not like these. They don't have the, you know, can't pinch them like that. You just kind of pull them up over the fuel line. But they're still helpful and good to have. But yeah, that's it. That's concluded, man. It's done. I thought it was done the first time, but like I said, this check valve just does not like traditional fuel line, Tygon fuel line. It just doesn't like it. It's just the diameter is too big. So, and if you have anything laying around that'll let you, make sure that the line isn't being pinched through the grommet, that's key too. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helped. I know it's a bit lengthy, but I did my best to try to keep it short.